Hey, welcome back to the Field and Faith podcast. I'm Chris, and I'm again joined by Luke Detraz.
Hello, hello.
And we are going to get started today talking about some of the things that have been kind of a difficulty with our lives, which most of us have been involved in ministry for a long period of time. And that is the complications of being involved in a ministry, running a ministry, financing a ministry, and also having your own family, your marriage, relationships that you also have to contend with when a ministry demands so much of you. And so we're going to dive into it, especially with the foundation of Field and Faith, which is brand new. Luke, how was getting a 501c3 started?
Well, it was incredibly easy and difficult at the same time. You know, it probably would have been easy for most people doing paperwork and looking at bylaws and legalities and all that mumbo jumbo. But for somebody like me who didn't go to college, it was incredibly difficult and confusing. So for the most part, it's fairly streamlined nowadays, but the paperwork and the time waiting and everything that goes into it and liabilities and all the nonsense was a lot, to say the least.
That was the one thing I'm so glad I never had anything to do with, which was getting everything put together. I know there's websites and everything out there kind of like built for it and everything like that, but everything in my experience with ministries and nonprofits is that I just get hired on. We both went to a church called The Shelter for a long period of time. It had been open for 12 years and it had closed its doors in February of 23. And so that had kind of this cool kind of eye-opening thing for a lot of us because we had made that church such a huge part of our lives. And for me, I had worked there while it was closing down and everything like that, and been a part of their social media, their podcasts, their videos, and their college youth. I mean, we had done so much for ministry, but when you invest in something, it's very difficult to kind of be balanced because when you're dealing with people, people can be extremely difficult, and those difficult people oftentimes ask a lot of us, and getting pulled away from our families and kind of trying to invest into other people has been difficult. And we know that's a difficult thing for individuals. Work-life balance, I think it's the hardest thing for a lot of us. Putting work aside, I always get yelled at by my wife because I will be on vacation, but because I work digitally, doing podcast and video editing, there are times where a client needs something and I have to put vacation on hold for a little bit to get it done. And so we're going to dive into Luke's kind of story with this because, I don't have kids, but you have 3.
I do, in varying ages of 12, 8, and 2.5.
Parker.
Yes, the 2.5-year-old is in terrible twos on steroids right now. So,
but if you don't know Luke personally, his son Parker is a wrecking ball of all capacities of life. The dude is huge and he gets into anything and everything, talks to you in third person, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
He uses his name like, Parker is going to turn on TV. Grandma is going to go make dinner.
Yeah, Grandma's making dinner today, so let her go for breakfast.
So, but how was it for you? How is it for you right now? I mean, obviously planning a nonprofit, getting into it, developing it, creating content for it. I mean, what's it been like, man?
Man, it's been really, really actually hard. I have a full-time job. I have a business, and starting this nonprofit with a family of 3 and a wife and dogs and chickens and a house, is incredibly difficult at times, and it's different too because you expect a nonprofit to operate like everything else does, where you can sit down and have a conversation with your kids and have something move forward from it, or like a business world, there's a level of success and where it's supposed to go and you can succeed with it. But with a nonprofit, it's completely different, and trying to understand that and work through it has been really unique, and it's been a very big learning curve that God's kind of put on me of like, I'm going to teach you about patience now, and I'm going to teach you how to take the proper steps and slow down. And that's kind of been a unique thing for me, is to slow down. I'm getting a little older in age, and I feel like I've hit that point of where it's like, I enjoy sunsets and sunrises more, and I've slowed down a little bit of my life, and it's been a good time to do it too.
Yeah. And I mean, anyone, if you're involved in ministry, you're probably laughing along because you understand that there's nothing that ever slows down in ministry. Things like will have kind of their ebbs and flows. And I think as an individual, like I know for me, like there's those high paced seasons, which Christmas, Easter, all the big holidays, it's like the Super Bowl for every single church. But I think what's so unique about Field and Faith is the consistency of it is like there is no on or off season, because unlike other states in Arizona, we get the amazing pleasure of kind of having like hot summers. Well, we're not doing anything down in the valley. We're going up north. But then when winter rolls around, we're not snowpacked. We're not covered in. And so we can run events and do our programs down here in the valley because we've got the Verde River that comes on down here. So we can go camping still. And it's only 30, 40 minutes away from Phoenix, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great time. Well, no matter what, that's why I love Arizona. So if you're not from Arizona, please don't come. Is literally within an hour or two, you can be anywhere you want. If you want to be in the sand dunes doing stuff, you want to be up in the woods doing stuff, if you want to be snowboarding or trout fly fishing, or if you want to drive to Mexico, within a few hours, you can do all these things.
And that's what's pretty cool. And so most of our programs and everything like that with our people is getting other people involved. And, I think a lot of ministries, they really struggle with trying to get people involved. But with Luke's vision around this and what you've kind of created, and with our group of guys that we have within our life, we've got a ton of really cool support from individuals who are vastly skilled in so many different aspects of life. I kind of laugh when I look at our friend group because a lot of the guys in the group, like you would never want these guys, like you'd be like, how did these guys all get together? But it was simply like our church. These guys are my church family, and they've been best friends for a long period of time. And when one person came up with the idea, which is what Luke did, a lot of us were like, that is something I definitely want to be a part of. And now we're just developing these mentorships and how do we utilize them in these different fields. So.
Yeah, it's been a cool opportunity, because there's so many people that want to give something, and a lot of people don't know how to give. We always say, give of your time, give of your talent, or give of your treasure. And these guys want to give of their time, or they want to give of their talents, or their treasure. And it's a great opportunity for people to jump in. There's people like, yo, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to do that, but I fished as a kid, and I had a really good upbringing, and I want to just be there and be available, and that's great. Like a kid just needs somebody to be around that actually genuinely wants to be there and wants to listen and hear them out and take part in what they're doing. I think that's something I've noticed even with my own kids. Like they don't care about you having the nicest of things in the house or buying them the toys. Yeah, they might ask for those things all the time, but they just want you to be there and have some intentionality behind it.
Well, I think your kids ask me for those things.
Totally.
So I'm glad they're not asking you, because like when I roll over, it's like, hey, can we go to PetSmart? I'm like, what are we going to PetSmart for?
Oh, that's every day.
Hey, I want a new fish. I'm like, okay. Yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, Parker, his youngest, the terror, is my godson. And so we probably do dinner, once, twice a week, which we got
At the bare minimum.
yeah. And we keep each other accountable for a lot of things in our life. He's one of my accountability partners in the sense of, our wives seem to be best friends just as much as we are best friends.
It worked out really well that way.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to show like who we were attracted to for our spouses. They also have similar personalities in the sense of what they really like, which is Amazon shopping and graphic tees. And so they have that shared bond, but my wife is just an amazingly kind-hearted individual, which complements me very well, because with us, we do not have kids. And so our background is how can we best help out the people in our life that are parents. And I think it goes to exactly what you had just said, is just sometimes it's just showing up, because for our group of friends, I think my role has been, I'm going to be 38 here pretty soon before I can ever have a kid because of the 9-month process. But that wonderful thing is going to take place hopefully in our life. But for that time being, it's been, how can I help somebody else out? And there have been times, not just you, but our other friends where, I've gotten calls at 3, 4 in the morning and, hey, can you come over and watch our kid? Hey, we're both sick. Can you get the kids ready for school? And I'm up at 5 in the morning already anyways. So answering that phone call, being there for our friends, is interesting, but also extremely challenging. It goes back to what we've been talking about, which is that work-life balance, because now that I have a wife, now I have to check in with her and be like, hey, I'm leaving. I don't know when I'm coming back. I've got to take care of so-and-so's kids. And she's just like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, have a good one. So
that's definitely what we do too. It's like you have that nightly routine that we now have because we both have flexible jobs where we make our own schedules, and our schedules change from literally hour to hour sometimes, to where we have these nightly meetings of, all right, here's my day. What are you doing tomorrow? All right, I'll take this kid, you take that kid. All right, we'll meet this. I'll make dinner, you do this. And it's just, we're on such a good page now, but it's fun to be able to balance that and have a structure and a friendship and a bond that you can rely on no matter what, which is really good.
Yeah. And a lot of the guys that help out with Field and Faith, they balance their lives out pretty well. And I think a lot of the concern, a lot of the times when I got started with this, was how do we balance our own families? Because a lot of the mentors have their own kids, different ages, and even have daughters. And so diving into an organization like Field and Faith is, well, how do we commit ourselves to these kids, but how do we also commit ourselves to our own families? Because I think the first thing that is the most important to any one of us is raising our own kids, right?
Yeah. We have to raise our own kids. That's what we're called to do. And if we had children, we have to raise them up in the way that they're supposed to go. Just like these kids that we want for these kids is to raise them and have them have that ability and to learn from that. So we have to, go through with our families first before we can connect with these other kids.
Yeah. And, again, I've never had kids, but I am an uncle to about 12. And so within our group of friends, they're not my brothers, they're not my sisters, but every single one of their kids will call me Uncle Chris. And so it's been a weird term, but it's an endearing term now because I'm the fun uncle that comes over and plays and has a good time. And then honestly,
runs away when the house gets messy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the role of the fun uncle, is to get away when the work starts rolling in. But truly, people say, hey, what are you doing this time? What are you doing that time? And if we've got nothing going on, we both agreed, my wife and I, that we are going to be a help to the people, because I'm going to call every single one of these people later on when we have kids and just drop them off at the front door and be like, it's your turn now, buddy.
One thing that actually, it's funny is you say it like that. And I think that's important to remember too, is everybody's in a certain time and a place in their life, and everybody has different ways of showing and showing up. And, whether it's your time, talent, or treasure. And it's we all have to give us something at some point in time. And it's, your time right now is to give of your time, which is amazing. And that's what we ask for with these mentors. Hey, we're asking for a lot of time, but the time that you're giving to these kids is so much bigger than that. And that's what we need from everybody. It's just to think about that time that you have. Do you have the time now? Okay, let's make the time,
And obviously, we can have a bunch of people giving all of their time, but I think, it's just, I come from the background of a church, and I know the inner workings of most nonprofit organizations and what goes on behind closed doors and how things need to get paid. And, when you're asking for donations, it's the most uncomfortable thing on the planet, is constantly reaching out to people and being like, hey, we need this, we need this, we need this. But you have made something a part of this organization, time, treasure, or talent, where there are individuals that we have that are just donors, and they're individuals who just believe in the mission of what we're doing, they work full-time careers and they can't give time or talent, but they're able to give their treasure. And they've planted seeds within the organization that allow us to kind of purchase some things or do some things. And, I honestly will look at it and say, man, if I can give time and talent, but I can't give treasure, that's okay. And for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, all that they do is give money. I promise you, in every nonprofit organization, there are people like that. Like, we had this one guy at our church. His name was JJ. And he was probably the one guy who, he ran his own business, but he was more treasure, and more lives got renewed, got saved, got balanced, because he had rooms in his house and he would invite drug addicts into his house to live with him, and he would help them get clean. And then he would, invite people to church and do X, Y, and Z. And when our men's retreat would go on, he'd be like, oh, I can afford 5 extra spots to get 5 more guys to go, but I can't go this year because I've got business going on. And so I always think it's an interesting balance a lot of times for people, like, hey, I can do one of the 3. And I think that's probably the coolest thing in ministry is if you can give one of those 3, you're solid.
Totally. Yeah. And we have mentors too, that give of their talent on top of their time. So we have certain guys that are just really good at speaking truth and speaking biblically. And we have guys that know how to hunt and fish that can help these kids a little bit more than I can, because, I try to do everything that I can, but I can't be with everybody all the time. And, and the treasure piece is such a big deal. Like, if you actually think about it, man, you get to be a part, either way, if you give your time, talent, or treasure, you get to be a part of these kids literally getting to catch their first fish. Like, watching one of our kids recently catch his first fish was the most gratifying, amazing moment. And then getting a text from his mom a couple days later was just it was life-changing to be able to see that thing happen, because I put in time and I put in treasure and I put in my talent, and to watch all these guys do the same thing, to all get to witness this moment of this kid catching his first fish was so incredible.
Yeah. And then we're kind of putting in it because we're never going to give anyone's name away because of who we work with and stuff like that. But
legalities.
And this individual, we got to the campsite. So on our last camping trip that we ended up doing, we were in traffic for 3.5 hours because of a car accident. There was a fatality a mile and a half before our exit, which was terrible.
It's a 2.5 hour drive. It took us 6 hours to get to this campsite.
It was bad. So we ended up getting there and having to get set up at night. And this was his first time ever camping, right?
He'd been camping in the desert, but it was his first time camping in the forest and doing the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so honestly, he was kind of worried and scared. And he's
afraid of bugs and everything that's in the woods.
Yeah. And so he's looking out and stuff like that. He's like, what is out there? I go, I had my headlamp, which is 350, 400 lumens, spotted out there. I go, nothing is out there. He goes, but I hear things. I go, well, there's animals that live out there. Are they coming to get us? Be like, no, you're much bigger than they are.
It's safer out here than in this concrete jungle that we live in. Yes.
Exactly. But yeah, and so, but by night 2, just completely comfortable in the surroundings. And again, him catching his fish was just pure joy of that first bite that he ended up getting, and then just being like, what do I do? We're yelling at him, reel it in. And probably the coolest thing, I think I was more excited because I didn't catch a fish at all that day. Or did I catch a small one?
You didn't catch anything.
I didn't catch anything.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, thanks for that. But it was cooler to see somebody else reel something in because he caught more than anyone else, or had more bites, or had them on the line more than anyone else. No, I caught a fish and
you did. Yeah.
Zach brought the net and literally had it in the net, and then it jumped out of the net. We're not going to get it. I love you, Zach, but Zach lost my fish. I'm holding that to my story. Zach lost my fish. I knew I caught something.
Here, let me put it like this, though. right? If we talk about the business world and the life balance, I could work 50 hours a week and come home and feel like I'm in a stagnant job and like miserable and I'm not doing anything. And I can sit here and count up how many hours I've spent putting this ministry and this nonprofit together, how many miles we've driven to each one of these events, how many miles we've hiked on some of these trips, how much thought we've put into Bible studies, how much money we've spent on gas and food and tents and fishing poles for a single moment that made it all worthwhile.
Oh, dude. I mean, yeah. And like it's wild to think about the vision towards this is, right now we've got a small number of kids that we're impacting, but the vision of it is to be in double digits, 20, 30, 40, 50 kids eventually, getting into it. And just, I'm wondering like on the ideas of, well, how many first catches are we going to get? Or how many first camping trips? And, that vision of it is what I think really pushes me, at least, to really engage with what we're doing much more.
Yeah, I think of it too, like, God talking to Abraham, and like, I'm going to number your children like the stars. It's like we can almost have that impact. We're going to have the opportunity. God's given us this blessing of like, how many kids are going to catch their first fish because of this, right? Granted, if we have one kid learn how to fish, how many of his kids and his kids' kids and his kids' kids are going to get passed down to? And this just keeps going on. And it's a cycle. It's a cycle of fatherlessness that we get to have the opportunity to break, which to me is probably the most important thing, because there's, dads die and things happen, but we can continue to grow these kids and show them what it means to be a dad and a father and a husband, and show them all the possibilities of what life can be to break these cycles of negativity.
Yeah. And, we jumped into some of the statistics while we were kind of doing our intro video for Field and Faith. And, it's genuinely heartbreaking. But also on the other end of the spectrum, while we were looking at some of the negativeness of like the impact of fatherlessness in America and what those statistics look like. I mean, you don't have to be, a rocket scientist to figure it out that when a dad is removed from the home or a dad isn't present in somebody's life, like things rise. Kids are more likely to go to prison. They're more likely to end up with mental health issues. And then we get into the kids who are in the foster care system right now. We've got mentors and individuals who are kind of foster parents and have been foster parents kind of coaching us like, hey, this is what you're going to deal with. And we're asking our mentors to take on a lot. And the more that we ask them to take on, they've responded awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's because they see the impact, because they've seen the impact so far, that it's not just, hey, you have to give of a couple hours once a month and maybe a call here and there or a camping trip here and there. It's like, cool, I get to spend a couple hours with a really cool kid, imparting life on him and growing him and helping him and being something that he's never seen before, possibly. Like, man, it's huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, it is. And, for me, it's always something to look forward to. We look at our schedules, and I think for a lot of people, we don't look forward to some things in our life. I know, like, for me as an adult, the more times that I've been depressed, it's just I haven't put anything on the books. And I think that goes for anything in life. I think, in relationships and our marriages, like if you don't put something down and saying, hey, this is what we're going to invest in, the relationship can kind of falter because you've got nothing that you're working towards or you're nothing that you're moving towards. Because like, I know for me and my wife, we are always planning the next vacation because that's what we do. We, with our lives, my wife has been a travel nurse and I work digitally. I can go anywhere and work, and she can take off work because she makes great money during those times.
Yeah, and we have the opposite thing where we have too much stuff on the schedule, and we always look for like, oh, I can't wait till we have a Saturday off. And even when I see Field and Faith outing on a Saturday, I'm like, yeah, that was actually going to be fun. I can't wait, because you know what that means? Like, yeah, we're going to go hiking for 3 hours in the morning, and we're going to do a Bible study on top of the mountain. And then I'm going to come home super refreshed after hiking in the heat because I just spent time and had a good time with a bunch of guys that I all love and appreciate, and we talked about life and we did it together, and it's going to be amazing.
And that's just the other thing. Like, there hasn't been a single event that I think any of the leaders have done where they've like come back and be like, oh, let's not do that again.
Totally. Yeah. It's been nothing but positive. Like, even one of the last ones we went on, everybody got sick prior to this, and there was a couple people out of town, and there was only a couple of us going, and we went to the spot, and I almost contemplated canceling the event because nobody was able to go. And there was one kid that was able to go and one other guy that was able to go. And I was like, let's just go. I got a spot. I want to go check it out. Nobody else is going. Let's just go. And of course, we get to the spot. We hike in. There's Native American petroglyphs everywhere. And we see all these people like staring off this rock. And sure enough, there's a desert bighorn sheep standing there. Which, if you've never seen a desert bighorn sheep, I grew up in Arizona. I'm 36 years old. I've been out in the outdoors my entire life. I have never seen one out and about before. And to see this thing like 125 yards away, just standing there, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And this kid now got to see something that I've been waiting my entire life to see and got this opportunity. So it's just like, yeah, no matter what we do, we're going to get some sort of blessing or some sort of like gifting or see something in the situation, which I love to death.
And I think, that's the spiritual reward of mentorship is, I don't know how many times I've been in a ministry where I'm sent out to go do something and I've dreaded wanting to go and do it because, when you're in a ministry position, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that they will sign up for an event, but then they won't go. And so if nobody ends up signing up for the event, that you're the only one you get called in, voluntold that you're going to go and do something. And I've never been voluntold that I have to go and do something with this because my attitude about it has always been like, I'm always looking forward to it because the conversations that we do get to have with these kids are not just fully spiritual all the time. We've got individuals who are interested in cybersecurity and, different likes and stuff like that. And we bring our life into them and share our stories coinciding with them sharing their passions with us.
Yeah, I think that's one thing too we try to do. And what we try to establish with a lot of these things is this, even with our mentors, we have different ages of mentors, from the age of 30 up to, I don't even want to get this wrong for Dave, but it is 50s,
Sure.
I think is appropriate. But we've tried to, have different age levels so that there's different understandings and different perspectives of it. Because if you look at like how the house structure and the home structure used to be and like communities used to be, everybody learned off each other, and you learn from your elders, and your grandparents lived in your home growing up, and that was just the norm. And that's the one thing we want to do is like, we want to build a community around this.
Totally.
Like, yeah, we're a nonprofit and an organization and whatever else, but we want to build a community of people. Like, yeah, we have teens in the group. We have 30-year-olds, 60-year-olds, whatever it may be. Like, we just want to build a community. We want to learn from each other. We want to do life together because men are called to be together and to work together and to learn from one another. Iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm going to end it off today. I'm going to tell a story.
Ooh, okay.
Because one of the things I think when we think about what we really want to be doing with Field and Faith is impacting their lives now, but honestly, with that kind of like the idea of the shot of what can happen in the future, it's very different. And so what I've ended up seeing through a lot of the camping experiences that I had is that I've gone camping by myself, or I've gone camping with just my wife, or I've done solo trips because I just got to get out in nature. But it always seems to be that I'm the most grateful when I've gone out when I was single, being with other people and realizing that there are probably 9, 10, 12 of us now who have been camping for over 10 years now together. And we've done trips. I mean, my wedding was done at a campsite.
Yep, yeah.
And so there have been opportunities where I was like, oh, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars at a wedding venue because I know a campsite that can host 150 people and will allow 150 people onto a campsite. And so for $350, I got a wedding venue. And then I had all of my friends come in and build my wedding for me. And I think the idea of the thought is like, because of the relationship buildings of the conversations that happen around campfires or what goes around all these things, that you have invested so much over long periods of time, and you know who works and who can set up lights and who can build a campfire, who can build dinners and who can do this, which is all of these aspects and strengths and characters of individuals, is that now I've got a group of people where I know I can rely on for the moments, what we've talked about, like not just the great moments of your life, like people showing up to my wedding, but also like during the harder times, because we started off this episode talking about like, hey, like Luke and I both dealt with depression. We both came to Christ on this idea that like, you know, not everything is sunshine and, you know, rainbows, but what we have in our lives is a group of people, and we're wanting to build this community that encompasses not just here and now, not just fishing skills, not just hunting skills, but relationship building skills, so that people develop and can almost create like what we've done, which is a family that is not bound by blood.
Yeah, that's truth, man. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And that's what we have done so far, which is incredible to see.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for sticking around with us today. I hope your drive has been good, or wherever you guys are enjoying this podcast from. If you guys go ahead and like and share, we are just getting started.
Yeah. Follow us on social media at fieldfaith.org. Check out the website, fieldfaith.org. And yeah, we'll see what we got next for you.
Yeah. And if you got any questions or any other topics that you think we should be talking about, what is it? Info at
fieldfaith.org.
info@fieldfaith.org. So reach out to us there, and we'd love to have different guests on, because if you've ever edited your own voice, it's terrible. And so we don't like hearing ourselves talk that much. We'd love to hear different stories from different perspectives on life, on faith, community building, and everything in between. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day.
Yeah, have a good one. See you next time.